All right, welcome everybody to our really 2016 annual planning is what we're going to talk about for the most part. We'll definitely cover some other things, but welcome to the Real Estate Realities Hangout. We do this every fourth Wednesday of the month. So the fourth Wednesday of every month, we get together at 12:30 and talk about something to build your business, how we're building our business, potentially even something that we're working on, hopes of building the business, and we try to share some ideas. So as we move forward today, make sure that you take full advantage of the Q&A tab. If you're watching live on the Google Plus page, you should be able to see a little blue and white button below you where you can ask a question and we'll try to answer that for you. And for whatever reason that's not working, sometimes Google changes things up. Feel free. You can actually email us live as we go here to kenny@toddtramonte.com, Kenny, and he can try to shuffle that over to me while we're going. And we'll see if we can cover exactly what would be a big benefit to you. But right out of the gate here, let me just kind of walk you through what we will cover. When we invited you, we kind of told you exactly what we intended to cover today. So let me tell you kind of what we'll do there, and then a couple of other things I think that will be beneficial. But we said we were going to talk about how to plan out your 2016 in just one day and 2 nights. So I'll give you the exact structure kind of system that my team and I go through, and then an exact system for you to replicate in your business, whether you're a one-person business or you're a 40-person team. And then we'll talk about how to choose your income and then build the plan that will get you there. Now that might sound like it's total BS, to be honest with you. It might sound like, it's not that easy. And I never said it would be easy, but I will clearly state that you can choose your income in this business and build a smart plan to get there. Now you can also build a crazy pie in the sky plan that probably won't work, but we're going to talk through a realistic plan of how to get you where you need to be. Again, didn't say it would be easy, but we can give you a clear path to get there. We're also going to talk about how to organize the complete chaos in your world to zero in on your top priorities. And when I say that, you may not feel like your world is chaos right now, but I would bet that there's more things that you want to do than you are doing. There's more things that you want to implement into your business or achieve in your business, or maybe even in your life outside of your business. There's more things that you want to do or achieve than you're actually getting done. So we'll talk about a strategy that's actually been incredible. I kind of stumbled on it. It was an idea that I had that I thought was kind of routine, and it turned out to be really powerful for our team. So we'll talk about that. We'll also talk about how to identify the biggest obstacles for you and your team and your business. Again, whether you're solo or you've got 20 or 30 or 40 people on your team, the strategy will work for a small group or a huge group. But we'll talk about how to identify the obstacles that are in your business. And then we'll talk about kind of how to proceed with what I call rhinoceros-like intensity. There's a great book out there called Rhinoceros Success that you should read if you haven't. But basically, how to proceed with some intensity to overcome or avoid those obstacles that you identify through this planning process. And then, of course, we'll talk about how to break your annual plan down into a quarterly plan, into a monthly plan, and into even a daily plan. So that once you have kind of your big picture, this is what I want to do in the next 12 months or in the next calendar year, then you need to be able to answer what I do today. And when you show up at the office or you get ready for work tomorrow, you say, what do I do today? You got to be able to break the big picture down so that you can actually take action on that. Excuse me. And then the last thing, well, maybe not the last thing, but we'll definitely also cover how to lead your team through this process. We won't spend a ton of time on that because basically you're going to want to mimic what we're doing here right now. There are some pointers on how to leverage these things out to team members. And if you don't have a team, just remember you do have a team. Your team may be made up of vendor partners or people who support you and encourage you. It may not be that you have 4 buyer agents and 2 listing agents and a transaction coordinator and an executive administrator or a team leader or office manager or whatever, but you may be the hub, the sales portion of the team, and then you might hire out some marketing, or you might cooperate with a home inspector, an appraiser, a surveyor, a title company, lender, those kinds of things. So when I say team, don't let that disqualify you if you feel like you're not a team. to do this business well, you've got to have a team of some kind. So we'll talk about those things. And really, before we launch into that, I just want to share a little bit about why I care about annual planning. I'll be honest with you, my first several years in the real estate business, I didn't do any annual planning. I didn't do quarterly or monthly. I didn't even do daily planning. I woke up with some God-given gifts and some energy and passion to do it, and virtually no plan whatsoever. But I hustled. And so in the beginning, I struggled and I started to figure some things out. And then I would maybe get a little overconfident and get knocked back a little bit, learn some lessons, and get back at it. And you can succeed that way if you've got the time and tenacity, and you can afford to do that. But my business truly began to take a whole new shape. I began to see a completely new level of success probably 6, 7, 8 years ago, when I really started to plan well. Doesn't mean I wasn't selling homes and making money before that, but I began to really build consistent, safe, healthy, productive growth into my business. I really began to see systems working in concert with each other. I began to see team members that joined us having success and having the ability to replicate that success. I began seeing some free time and flexibility in my own world. So don't underestimate this planning deal. While I say that, though, I will say don't overestimate this planning deal either. You've got to take action, and you've got to do the plan. You have to execute the plan. You have to take action that you plan now. So you don't want this to be a big pie in the sky. Oh, let's just pick a huge number and say that's our goal. You got to take action on that. So we're gonna chunk that down, and I want to do that really quickly. But the year that I did it, I mean, it was one piece of paper, jotted out with a pen, came back a couple of times throughout the year, scratched some things out, and redid it. And I went from, at the time, basically, I had stripped my team back down to just me and a part-time assistant. Within, I think, 14 months, we were back up to 2 buyer's agents. My assistant was full-time. We had an intern, and we grew, I think, 462% that year. Our production, actually, I think that was our profitability, went up 462% that very first year that we went through a process like this. Now, the process has grown since then, but this is the process that that has grown out of that first year of planning and some really significant growth in our business. So one more thought before we really dive in here is this is not a set it and forget it type of system. We're not buying a mutual fund here. You're not going to build this plan and then stick it in a drawer and check back in on it in a year. Okay, we're going to talk through how to create a plan that you're going to interact with every single day for all of 2016, or if you're smart, for the last couple of months of 2015 and all the way through 2016. So you get that jump start now. That's why we're having this conversation on August 28th, so that you're prepared and you start taking action now that will start having impact in your 2016, whether that be your fiscal year or your calendar, however you want to look at it. But in the next 12 to 14 months, you want to have a really incredible year, both in your business and in your personal life. And so that's kind of the last thing I'll say before we dive fully in is you don't only want to plan your business. My big, deep, hardcore belief is that if you're going to be in the real estate world, whether that be as an agent, support staff, team leader, business owner, even extended beyond that, mortgage insurance, whatever, you've got to decide what life you want to live up front. And I don't mean sitting on a beach on a private island with your feet up, sipping Mai Tais all day. That's not realistic. Most of us are going to have to work for a living, okay? Now, the good news is this work can be incredibly fulfilling. It can be a lot of fun, but you got to work, okay? So what I'm saying here is you have to decide what your priorities are. If your marriage is the number one priority, if your faith is your number one priority, if your kids are your number one priority, if your golf game is your number one priority, it's your choice what your priorities are. But chances are there are more than a handful of things that come before your job. And I certainly think that's healthy. I'm a Christ follower, and I'm passionate about my marriage, and I've got 3 kids, and I volunteer, and I do some things that my family and I enjoy, and I do some things that I enjoy. Most of you know I have a hard to explain grown man gardening habit, but that's okay. I'm into it, right? So I have priorities that come before my business. And I'm obviously a passionate entrepreneur, business owner, small business guy. But I've made a commitment a while back that I didn't really want to work weekends anymore. And I still work an occasional weekend, but I've built the business around that priority. I've got friends all over the country. I've got people that we train and consult with that don't want to work Fridays or weekends, or they don't want to work any nights, or they want to take 6 weeks off in the summer when their kids are out of school, or they homeschool and they want to take 2 weeks off 5 times throughout the year. You've got to decide what those priorities are before you build your plan. Now, here's the risk. If you don't decide the lifestyle you want, and again, when I say lifestyle, I'm not talking about Ferraris and sitting on the beach. If you want that, go for it. I'm not saying you can't achieve it. I'm just saying for most of us, that's not even what we want. And if you do want it, it's most of the time not very realistic. But if you have a dream life that you don't work Fridays, or you don't want weekends, work weekends, or you don't work evenings, or you work 3 days a week, or you don't work directly with clients, or whatever it is, if you don't plan that up front, you're no longer going to have the ability to plan your business around your life. What's going to happen virtually 100% of the time is you will end up forfeiting and having to plan your life around your business. And those of you that are with us right now, or whether you're watching the recording down the road, if you've had any success whatsoever in the real estate world, you know that what I'm saying is true. If you don't start by deliberately planning your life and your core priorities first, real estate will take over. You'll start taking calls from buyers that are saying, hey, I'm pre-approved and I want to see a house right now. If you don't show it, somebody else will. So you jump in the car and you run out. You've got the best month you've ever had ahead of you. And so it's just hard to say no to that next listing. And so you run out and take a listing that maybe you really didn't want because you didn't have a great plan, but the money sounded great, and so you jumped at it. So you've got to plan the life you want first, or you're going to end up with the life that's left over from your real estate career, owning your life and dominating your thoughts and your email account and your cell phone and your family's time. If you're single, then it's going to dominate your personal time, your private time. So this applies across the board. Okay. So as we jump in, the first thing to think about when you're making a plan for the next year or year plus of your business is that as you start to cultivate that vision in your mind of what you would like to achieve, just remember, I'm a big fan of leadership and studying leadership, and there's a pastor of a large successful church. His name is Bill Hybels, and many of you probably heard me talk about this before, but years ago at a leadership conference, I heard him say that vision leaks. Now, I don't know if that's his original thought or not, but that's where I grabbed onto it. And to me, what vision leaks means is you establish a vision for yourself, for your company, for the next year, for your team or whatever. And as soon as you establish it, it starts to leak out, meaning it starts to get away from you and your team members or your employees, or it starts to become diluted. If you do not re-communicate and reinforce that vision on an extremely regular basis, whether that be daily or weekly or monthly, verbally, through email, or get that stuff printed and put it on the wall, or have people memorize that or say it back to you, reinforce that in your training. So as you go through this process of kind of setting a vision and setting a plan for your business, make sure that part of your plan is to re-communicate that to yourself. That may come through some sort of affirmation or just reminder or self-analysis or review or whatever, or it may come through literally printing it and putting it on the wall in your office or on the dashboard of your car or the mirror at your house. But you've got to re-communicate that vision or that plan to yourself, or you're not going to achieve it. And if you do, it's probably by luck. Okay, so let's dive in here really quickly. In order to do this, everything we've been talking about, set a great vision that will inspire you and motivate you to take action. In order to build your life first and your business around your life, there are some key things that we need to do in the business. So let's start with where I said, look, we're going to do this in 2 nights and 1 day. Now, obviously, you can take more time than that if you want, but I would strongly advise that you don't try to do this in any less time than 2 nights and 1 day. So here's my recommendation. The first night, hold on, let me share something with you guys here. Okay. I'm going to show you exactly how I do this as we go. Okay. So, boom. Okay. Can you see that, Kenny?
Yep.
Oh, I forgot to introduce Kenny. Most of you guys already know Kenny. I'm the goofball with all the ideas. Kenny's the one that keeps me sane and makes sure that a lot of this stuff happens. So Kenny makes sure that a lot of these things get implemented and that we're rocking and rolling. So you should be able to see what we call a master to-do list. So it's a fairly simple document. Obviously, it's mostly numbers and lines. There's some wording down here that walks you through it. But basically, where I recommend you start is with this document, or just get yourself a legal pad and map this out. By the way, if you're in our members only group, you have access to this in the membership site or in the Facebook group. So we can get you a copy if you don't know where that is. But if you don't have this and you want to do this on your own, just get yourself a blank piece of paper or a legal pad and make 3 columns. Column number 1 is to-do items, things that you want to do in your business, implement in your business, create in your business, or achieve, or whatever. And the big important thing here is to make an exhaustive list. And when I say exhaustive, I truly mean you want to spend an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours making a list where every single thing that you can possibly think of that you want to get done gets onto this list. Now, you might want to spend an hour, take a break, switch gears, watch a ball game, talk to a friend, get something to eat, come back, your perspective will have shifted, and then go at it, and you'll probably remember another 15 or 20 things. But you want to have an exhaustive list. You ideally want to go way beyond. I think we have 40 lines on here. Most people end up going on to the back. You want to get everything out of your head and onto the paper. And I strongly recommend that you don't type this, that you do it with a pen. There's just some power in getting it from your head to your hand onto the paper. Number 1, it's going to alleviate some of that mental clutter where you're just always trying to remember all the things that you're trying to get done. So number 1, it's going to alleviate some of that mental clutter. Just get it out of your head and onto the paper. Number 2, it's going to begin the process of organizing your thoughts so that you can have a very effective plan. So I don't want to spend too much time on this. It's really, really powerful. Do this. Okay, so start with this plan and make sure that you are exhaustive about it. Get everything you possibly can out of your head. So that's column 1. And column 2 is going to be your short-term priorities. You're going to want to start to kind of organize that huge column that you had 50, 100, 200, 300 things on. You're going to go through there and you're going to say, what are the most important things here? And you're going to move those over into a column that is things that you would like to get done in the next, say, 90 days, one day to the next 90 days. And then you can filter from there 1 to 30 days. And in between there, I usually have a next 6 months category. But what you're doing is you're saying, here's all the things I'd like to get done. At least I've got them out of my head and onto the paper. Now, let me pull, say, 20 or 30 that are the most important. And then let me pull 10 or 15 of those that I want to get done in the next quarter, and then 10 or 15 that I want to get done as soon as humanly possible. The cool thing is, just in the process of doing this, you'll probably knock out 5 or 10 of these things. I want to give Kenny a couple of seconds to comment on this, just because I know the first time he saw this, he had one thought, and the first time he actually implemented it, he came away with a completely different thought. So do you want to give 30 seconds or a minute, Kenny, just on how you've seen this work?
Yeah, I don't remember my first thought that I had, but it was probably that it was a simple process, that like this wasn't that, innovative or anything like that, but I trusted it and just did it, and it's helpful. I literally pulled out my master to-do list that was at my house like 2 days ago and looked at it to see what stuff I needed to cross off that I had been doing, and what stuff I needed to get into my head that I needed to get done, that I had already thought through, and the majority of my list is complete. And so this is something that looks like a simple process, and it is a simple process for you to basically sit down and just dump a ton of ideas out of your head, because you probably have a lot of stuff that's just rattling around up there, and getting it out, getting it on paper, getting some clarity around that will help you, like leaps and bounds, make huge progress towards accomplishing what you want to accomplish.
And we can talk a little bit more about it later, but Kenny had 2 like huge milestone achievements that this really helped him kind of clarify. Some of that gets into goal setting, which we'll talk about here in a second. But okay, so again, I don't want to spend way too much time on this, but you want to start with this master to-do list. And it's not only just getting it out of your head onto the paper, it's starting to zero in on the most important things. So you get it all out, and then you start chunking it down. What are the most important, and what's the most appropriate timeline to complete those in? So that's your first night. That's all you got to do in that first night. It's just kind of a brain dump. Get it out of your head onto the paper and get the huge list chunked down into like a 6-month list, a 90-day list, and a coming soon list. Some of these things, it's not as important to get it allocated to the right timetable, but it's important to allocate that as a top priority, or I'll kind of get to that whenever I can get to it. So you might have your own system. You might get 3 colored highlighters, and the green things are the most important, and the red things are the next, and the yellow things are, I'll get to it whenever I can. But getting it out and starting to chunk that list down will help you take advantage of day 1 and night 2 in this process. So 1 day and 2 nights. Night 1 is using that master to-do list to really get that, to get clarity on all the things you would like to achieve. I also recommend that you spend so I was not entirely accurate. That's the most important thing to do at the first night. The second thing to do at the first night is to look back on the previous year. So hopefully you've been tracking your numbers and your statistics and your production and your marketing and all those things. So take a look back. Don't spend a ton of time, but spend 30 minutes or an hour just making some notes on, this is what I did in the last 12 months. If you're brand new in the business, then obviously you're not going to do this. If you've only been in the business 6 months, then you're looking back on 6 months. If you've been in the business 20 years, that's fine. Let's just look back on the last 12 months and say, what did I do over the last 12 months? Dump onto a master to-do list what you want to do in the next 12 to 14 months. Start to chunk that down and then let it sit. Now, this could be, night 1 could be right before the day, and night 2, or it could be a week before. I actually kind of like for it to be at least 50 days before you take a full day away for annual planning. So that's the kind of the next thing. You take that first evening, ideally a few days, if not at least a week before. You let that kind of simmer and sit, and then you may come back and add a few things or tweak a few things because it's on the top of your mind over the next several days. Then you're going to come back. So that's night 1. And then day 1 is a full day to go through a lot of what we're about to talk about. And that day may run into the night, and that's where that second night comes from. Okay, so that's kind of the primary approach to the 2 nights in 1 day. So the big first thing is to kind of get all that dumped out. Now, one of the other things that we promised we would talk about is how to choose your income first and then build a plan to get you there. So that's kind of the next thing we're going to do. Let me share another thing with you here. I don't want to spend a ton of time on this because I'm sure there's people out there that are way better at Excel than me. But here's a basic spreadsheet that I created to be able to do what we're talking about. So can you guys see that?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know if that was too small or what, but basically here's what we're looking at. Old Bob's a buyer agent, and he decided he wants to make $140,000 a year, or $140,000 next year. We've been tracking his numbers, so we know that his contact rate is 12.5%. His appointment rate is 5%. He signs 80% of his client appointments, and he closes 80% of his clients. His average commission is $3,500 And so this is how many closings he needs, how many clients, how many appointments, how many contacts, how many calls for the year, and then how many calls he needs for the day if he calls 245 days this year, which, by the way, I think is 5 days a week for 49 weeks. So he's taking 3 weeks off or 2 weeks and misses a day a couple times a year. Now, 5 days a week, most of us know, is not exactly killing yourself as a real estate agent. So that's just a snapshot. Molly over here wants to make 200. So she actually, I played with the numbers on contact and appointment, so you could see she might not have to do any more work as far as total number of calls if she can be slightly more effective at her appointment rate and her client rate and her close rate or her contact rate. So you can play with the numbers, but basically that's what it looks like for a buyer agent. You're probably going to have different commissions and different conversions and different lead types. So you need to know your numbers, but you ought to be able to create something like this. And basically the point is, if you know how much you want to make, then you can work it backwards. How much do you make on an average transaction? How many transactions do you need to get that amount of money? How many clients do you have to close a deal? How many appointments do you have to get a client? How many contacts do you have to get an appointment? And then you can go from there. Now, again, this doesn't mean it's easy. It just gives you a path to get there. This all sounds great, but if you don't have enough leads to call this many people, to reach this many people, to sign this many people, to sell that many, then you're in trouble. So then you obviously need a lead generation plan. Now, we can't cover everything under the sun today, but in our members only group, our last weekly call was literally about how to build a lead generation plan and make sure that you have enough lead sources and that you're weighting one and not obsessing over one. So maybe we'll do a hangout on that next month or something. But that's a snapshot of a clear path to setting, this is how much money I want to make. And here's a mathematical plan so that I can literally know what I need to do every single day to get there. Now, again, the spreadsheet I just showed you is mostly based off of internet leads. Well, hopefully, prayerfully, that's not your only source. Hopefully you're generating some referrals and some personal business, and you're out there hustling, some open houses and doing some networking, and maybe you're doing some direct mail or who knows what else. But so you should have some either average conversion rates across all your lead types, or you should start deciding, do I want to do the bulk of my business through online leads or through referrals or through direct mail or whatever. But as you start to create that plan, this is one piece of how you can say, this is how much I want to make, and now I'm going to back out a plan for how to get myself there. So hopefully that's helpful. That's very, very simple Excel spreadsheet formulas there. You could do it on a Google sheet or a lot of different things. But that's one of the ways to choose your income first and then figure out what needs to be done to get there. So under that plan, basically it was coming out to a buyer agent needing to make 40 calls per day based on those contact rate and conversion rates. So that'd be their deal. I want to make $140,000 a year. To do that, I need to make 40 calls a day, 5 days a week, 245 or whatever it is, 245 days or 49 weeks a year. And I need to be good at what I'm doing. I need to be effective on the phone, effective face-to-face, effective negotiating, all those things. Okay. So we talked about how to organize the chaos in your world to zero in on your top priorities. That master to-do list is a big piece of that. That helps you go from, I got so much I got to do, I have no idea how I'm going to do it all, and helps you really zero in on, okay, I got a lot to do, but those things aren't really important. They don't need to happen right now. These things need to happen in the next 90 days or so. These things need to happen in the next 30 days or so. So what you want to do, once you start to kind of zero in on, how much do you want to make, how many and by the way, let me back up off of that. That might not be the biggest thing for you, is how much money you want to make. Obviously, we're all in the business to make a living, and I don't apologize for that, but there are some things that are more important than how much you make. For you, it might be how many people you help, or how much time flexibility you have, or something else. But just know that when I talk about the money, that's because that's the thing that's easiest to quantify. It's not because I believe, or you should believe, that that's the most important thing. But as you zero in on that big picture goal, then what you're going to want to do is start breaking that down into priorities and time chunks. And one of the ways that we do that, and this is, I don't know that this is the most important document, but it's certainly one of the most important documents for this process for our team. Let me share that. Can you see that, Kenny?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So this is what we call a strategic plan. We borrowed bits and pieces of this from different books we've read. We're happy to share some of that with you. These are book recommendations that folks in our members group have seen. A lot of you guys we've sent out the books to, but basically we call this our strategic plan. It's a legal size document that kind of goes through some of the key things. I'm not going to go line by line and really go crazy with this because I don't want to take up our whole time, but this is kind of the meat of the process for us. And again, if you're in the group, you have access to this document. If you don't have hard copies that we sent you, there's soft copies in the private Facebook group and also in the membership group. If not, you can look at it right now, jot something down, or you can get in touch with us and we can show you how very, very cheaply we can get you a whole kit for this kind of stuff. But okay, so the first thing you want to establish are those core values. This really hopefully doesn't have anything to do with next year. This has to do with who you are as a person or as a company. What are the non-negotiable things for you? Some of those things for me are, punctuality and ethics. I want to treat others the way I want to be treated. I want to reflect the love of Jesus in my life and in my marriage and my family and my business. Those are my core values. Other kind of business core values for me are things like we want to differentiate with excellence. We want to be known in the marketplace that we are different than the competition because of the way that we really focus on doing things in a truly excellent way. We're not just surviving transactions, we're delivering really world-class value. So you want to have that lined out. We have those printed on the wall. We hand a hard copy to every prospective client that we meet with. It's on the website. It's in our email sometimes. This is the main centerpiece of who we are, and helps us hire, helps us fire, helps us train, helps us attract the right clients, and honestly helps us repel the wrong clients. So that's a big deal. The next thing is kind of, why are you in the business? I hate to breeze past this because it's also one of the most important things, but I'm going to trust that most of you have either read the book Start With Why, or you've been to a seminar, or somebody's walked you through this, or you just have a strong grasp on, if you don't know why you're doing things, it's going to be really hard to do the hard things you need to do, right? If you don't have like a burning desire to provide for your family, or to purchase a certain thing, or to go on a certain trip, or provide for someone else, or experience something, if there's not a burning desire and motivator in you, chances are you're going to hang the phone up and not make that extra call. You're going to cut out early and go home. You're going to take some extra time off instead of truly building your business. You're not going to hire that extra person because you don't want to have to deal with training him. If you have a burning desire and burning commitment that you've really laid it on the line to achieve, or to deliver on, then you're going to do those things that sometimes you don't want to do, that are hard to do, that other people won't do, and you're going to succeed. The other thing is, you want to establish your target market. That might be geographic, or what's called psychographic. That might just be, for the most part, it's going to be, who do you want to do business with? Are you hyper focused on homeowners who have homes on golf courses between 200 and 500? Or are you working with kind of anyone and everyone? Are you working with first-time home buyers, or are you working with luxury downsize buyers? Are you working with only sellers or only buyers? Are you working in one city or in multiple cities? There's a lot of ways that you can focus your market, but you want to answer the question, who is your absolute ideal client? And you want to line out a lot of details. I'm talking as many details as you can possibly think of. One of the really good ways to do this, just as a tip, is to identify who's your best client ever. You loved working with them, you made great money, they referred a bunch of people. If every client was like them, you would be a happy, happy camper. And then start to describe that person. It's a young, upwardly mobile couple, or it's whatever, a single, wealthy, elderly person. Who knows? But whatever it is, break that into a lot of detail so you can start to go after more people that are like that. I keep saying that each section is one of the most important sections, and it's true. These are all really important, which is why they made it onto our updated document. So SWOT analysis, again, anybody who's been to business school, read a business book, or been around business for more than half an hour has probably heard of a SWOT analysis. It stands for your strengths, your and your threats. You need to take an appropriate amount of time to evaluate this. Now, one of the ways to think about this is that the strengths and weaknesses can be thought of as internal. What are your personal strengths and weaknesses? What are your team strengths and weaknesses? Your strengths might be that you guys absolutely show up every day and put in the work. You prospect 3 hours a day. Your weakness might be skills. We put in the work, but honestly, we're not the best trained bunch in town. Your strengths might be that your team members are extremely gifted. Your weakness might be that you have a bunch of part-time people. Now, your opportunities and your threats are going to be external. Those are going to be things that are, I don't want to say completely out of your control, but they may be kind of more market oriented. An opportunity right now might be that you're in a low inventory market, and so you have an incredibly high success rate with sellers. A threat might be rising interest rates, or low inventory could be a threat for the buyer side of your market, that you just don't have enough buyers, or it could be a threat to the listing side because you don't have enough sellers. Whatever it is in your marketplace, you want to make sure you've spent an appropriate time really evaluating this. Strengths and weaknesses are things you can really do a lot to impact and change. Opportunities and threats are things that you can plan around. Sometimes you can have impact on them, but they're things you need to be aware of to try to craft a plan to take advantage of and to minimize some of the negatives there. Now, I'm gonna speed through this, but you need to have a really true long-term vision for your company. Where do you want to be 10, 15, 20 years down the road? This is where you just write that pie in the sky dream story of where you want to be. Do not filter. This is where you go big and paint a picture of your dream. This big, hairy, audacious goal, or your really, your overwhelming goal that scares you a little bit. What do you want to be known for professionally? How much money do you want to make? What do you want your team to look like? How do you want to be thought of by your competition? Things like that. And then break that down into at least these three categories. What's the big crazy goal? What's the absurd long-term vision? What's life going to look like for you 10 years down the road? Then you want to come over to the 3 to 5 year. You want to have that starting to get more clear. As you can see on all these things, we're starting really big and we're funneling down to the specific and the narrow and going from long-term to short-term, from big list to little list. So your 3 to 5, you want to start saying 3 to 5 years down the road, what are going to be my top 3 sources of business? How many transactions do I want to do? Or you might want to word that, how many people or families do I want to help? How many relationships do I want to build? What's your average sales price? What's your commission rate? What's your total revenue? And then you want to come down to 1 year. And this is where you need to have excellent clarity. This needs to be realistic. This needs to scare you a little bit, that it's a good, exciting goal, but that it definitely seems within the bounds of reason. And you need to chart those same things. What are your top sources of business? How many transactions? Price? You might prefer to track sales volume over transactions. Whatever the key metrics that you really want to track, have those on there. And then in the bottom, you want to probably, again, I keep saying it, but probably the major takeaway, the thing you're going to look at the most on here is your quarterly plan. So this, for annual planning, would be how to get started really well the first quarter of the year, and maybe you give yourself a jump start and you start on this in November and December. Again, that's why we're talking about it at the end of October. But what are the 3 or 4? You really don't want more than 3 or 4 major focus areas, major goals, major achievements that you want to achieve in the next 90 days. I truly believe the next 90 days are the most important time period in your business. Your 1 year goal is great, but chances are you're going to make some adjustments. You might add a team member, you might lose a team member, market might shift, your life might change, somebody gets sick, somebody has a baby, lots can change. But in the next 90 days is when you have the clearest vision of what's going to happen and what needs to be done. So you want to list 3 or 4 truly important tasks to be completed. You want to list who's going to be involved. Again, if you're an independent agent or business owner, you still might be bringing your mortgage guy or your insurance guy or your title company or your wife or your girlfriend or your neighbor or somebody in to help on something. And then by what date is that going to be completed? You want to be very, very, very specific. So this might be set up an online buyer lead capture website. This might be build out an expired mailing campaign. This might be list 10 houses. It could be something, it needs to be something very specific that you can measure, who's responsible for it, and by what date are you going to complete it. When we print this, we print it as a 2-sided document, and this is the entire second side. It's literally, we want to date this thing, and we want a bunch of blank space as we're thinking through and creating this, just to jot down some notes. Would this be a good goal? Let me think through that. What are the pros and cons? Who would need to be involved? Is that a realistic timetable? So just to jot those things down. So that's what we call our annual strategic plan, and it chunks down to a quarterly plan. Okay. Now, just to keep things moving along and try to be as helpful as I can, from there, we go to a monthly goal setting sheet. I don't want to spend too much time sharing documents, so I'm just going to give you a quick view of this one. Again, if you're in the group, you already have this. So we set up a quick goal plan. We've just kind of chunked it out 30 days, 90 days, 6 months, 1 year. But this is mostly looked at as a 30-day plan. We have our people commit to a certain amount of production. We've given them kind of some reminders and affirmations, some quotes, some scripture, and just some instruction for me. But you can get a quick picture of that. We have an agent version of that, a support staff version of that, kind of a leadership version of that. And that helps people take it from kind of your master to-do list down to your annual strategy, down to your quarterly plan, And then over here, you're going to reinforce that. You're going to rewrite your annual, your 6 month, your 90 days, and then you're going to write that 30 days very specifically and keep a really, really good look on it. And then give you a really quick look at what we call, well, I'll do it right here, actually. This is our daily deal. Can you guys see that? And we print these notebooks for our agents so they can kind of carry that with them everywhere they go. Again, if you're in the members only group, you have access to these, and we probably sent you some of these in the mail. And if you're not in the group and you want that stuff, I'll let you know how to reach us, and there's some really cool ways for you to get that and test some of this stuff out. But if you don't have all this, you can create this stuff. You can use a notepad, or you can type it up in Word or whatever program you like. The key thing is that you get this process down, and it might sound crazy detailed right now, but really what it is it's starting really big with all the stuff you want to do, starting to narrow down what's the most important priorities, what are the most important tasks, and then starting to chunk those into a plan. How much do I want to make? How many people do I want to serve and impact? How do I do that? Here's the annual view. Let me chunk that down into a monthly or a quarterly, and then a monthly, and then a weekly, and then a daily, so that when I show up at the office every day ready to work and achieve my goals, I know exactly what to do. There should be no day. If you're struggling in your business right now, I would bet you a pretty large amount of money that you're willing to work. I mean, if you're on this right now, if you're watching this right now, I know you want to grow. You want to do better. You want to learn. You want to increase your income, your flexibility, your time. You want to build your business around your life instead of having to cram your life into your business to get by. I know that that's who you are. And so it's important to move from the big picture and the idea and the desire down to a plan and then into taking action. So hopefully this is making sense and this is helpful for you guys. I feel like it's a lot of details because I really want to get you the brass tacks, the nuts and bolts of how we do this. Any thoughts on that, Kenny, before I keep rocking here?
No, I mean, I think just the overall goal setting and goal planning from an annual standpoint, like you were mentioning kind of briefly, of that's where all the quarterly plans come from, and then the monthly, and then the daily. And you know, you've mentioned it before, and I think you said it at the very beginning of when you started out that you know had a desire to go and work, but you just didn't necessarily know what to do and who to talk to or whatever. And so having that clarity around the vision of where you want to go and the goal setting plans of, you know, these are the things that I need to take action on every day, so you can come in and, you know, there's just some real basic success principles at play in that of, you know, plan your day out beforehand and then come in and you don't have any delay in knowing what you need to be doing, and you can start executing on some of those plans. So that's something that we've have to tell our team a lot, and it takes some people some time to get used to actually going through that process and doing that for themselves, because typically they've never done it before. It was a big process for me to learn how to do that and to really commit to doing it. And it took a while before I was like actually investing in the time to do that. And then when I started to actually do that, I started to see the results from it and accomplish some of my goals. And so I think don't brush over that. That's not something that you've never heard before. You know, you've heard that you should do goal setting. So take the time to really do that and do it right, and you'll be surprised at how much you can accomplish.
Yeah, and just to circle back, I mean, it's exciting for me. Obviously, I'm obviously a pretty committed goal setter kind of guy, but still, when I get away from it, things don't happen. And it's fun for me to see our team succeed and people that we're consulting with and training, you know, all over the country. But just to see Kenny in 1 year, you know, completely knock out college loans, buy his first house. I mean, just watching him say, look, this has been on my goal sheet now for, I don't know, a year, 2 years, you know, for 6 consecutive quarters, and I've been chunking at it. I've known it was a long-term goal, but now literally these things are happening. And I literally remember a morning where with our team members, I review their goal sheets with them every month, if not every week. And Kenny actually was kind of smiling. He's like, I'm kind of looking for some things to put on my goal sheet because I kind of knocked all my big ones out. Like, that's a really, really cool place to be. Is, you know, I instead of saying I set goals and never hit them, which is really discouraging and is true for a lot of people. Unfortunately, it's kind of addressing that I'm achieving my goals and I'm starting to now kind of go out and shop for new goals. You know, our team has hit our annual plan. Now we're starting to kind of open our mind up to, like, man, what set our goal for next year? What should we plan for next year? Should we grow our team members? Should we grow our production? Should we grow our fun and our flexibility? You know, you start having some really fun options because you start to understand and believe in your ability to put something in writing and then go out and make it happen in the world. So it's a fun process. I don't want to turn this all into goal setting. So I want to kind of get back to one thing that I feel like if I were you, I might want to hear a little bit more about. And that's, we talked about how to identify the biggest obstacles that will stand in your way. To circle back, you want to do that SWOT analysis. So you want to go through strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. That's probably the primary place that you're going to see that. And you need to spend the right amount of time to do that. If you have a team, you want to interview your agents and ask them that, you know, what's the biggest thing standing in your way of achieving your goals this year? As a team leader, your biggest obstacles are the things that are in the way of your team members. Your biggest threats are the threats to your team members' success. You know, as a leader in your company, your mentality has got to be that the people you serve first are your team members, and then the people you serve next are your clients. And that may sound uncomfortable, but I assure you that is the appropriate priority order. But the other thing to make sure that we don't gloss over is when you're going through that first night of this 2-night, 1-day process, and you go through your master to-do list, and then you spend some time reflecting on the previous year, you want to say, what are the things that got in the way of me achieving my goals last year? Or if you achieved all of your goals, what were the biggest obstacles? What are the things that slowed me down from doing even more than I did? For most of us, those are going to come down to time-related issues. Time is absolutely our most limited resource. You know, it sounds kind of obnoxious to say, look, you can always make more money. Again, it doesn't mean it's easy, but there are ways to make more money. It has been proven that you can make money quickly sometimes. You can make money slowly sometimes. But what you cannot do is make time, right? You can steward your time well. You can use your time well. You can allocate your time well, or you can do that poorly. So a lot of this planning comes back to the good old-fashioned calendar, good old-fashioned schedule, right? And I've probably referenced this on every lesson I've ever taught, every class I've ever taught, every speech I've ever given, and every book or article I've ever written. It's that important. When you're planning out your next year, one of the biggest things you're doing is planning how you're going to use your time, how you're going to invest that most valuable resource that you have. So you've probably heard about time blocking or different calendar strategies. You might like a printed physical piece of paper or a day timer or whatever. Part of the way we do that is with the daily to-do list, the daily big 6, the 6 most important things we're going to do. Prioritized, ABC, what are the top 3 most important? And then we're tracking all of our other stuff, and we're tracking today's, and we're tracking yesterday, and vendors, and all that stuff, so that we can keep track of that. But the most important thing is I've only got so much time. I can only probably do 5 or 6 top line things today. Some days you'll be able to do 1. And that's why you want to plan well, plan your year, chunk it down, quarter, month, week, day, and then next, you know, instead of hour by hour, what's next? What's the next most important thing I need to do? What's the most dollar productive thing? What's the most important thing for my health, my faith, my family, you know, whatever it is. But truly, the biggest obstacle for all of us is usually time and how we use it. But there may be some others. It may be budget. It may be negative people that are in your organization. It may be that a major employer in your area just pulled out and lots of jobs are being lost, and you need to build a plan around that obstacle. You've got to recognize what it is, but now can we bowl it over? Can we eliminate it? Or do we need to figure out how to get around it? But those are the 2 key ways to do that. Number 1, when you're looking back on the previous year, whatever was your biggest obstacle last year is highly likely to be your biggest obstacle next year. And if you don't address it, it's most likely to be the biggest obstacle until you do address it. After that, that's SWOT analysis and making sure that you don't do that only internally or only externally, and that you don't do that in a vacuum, that you bring other people in. Ask your spouse, ask your best friends, ask people you trust, ask your team members, ask your transaction partners. Hey, what do you think is the number one thing in my way of growing this business? What do you think is the number one thing in the way of our team from getting to help more people and serve more folks and have more success? You'd be interested in the answers you get. And I certainly hope that you accept them with gratitude. And I'm not trying to get all touchy-feely. I'm just saying many of us, and I certainly am wired this way, really don't like criticism, right? But at the same time, I've been fairly successful in my career. And honestly, one of my biggest frustrations is when I'll talk to people and say, I'm just frustrated. I want to do this, or I'm trying to figure this out, or I'm trying to overcome this obstacle or grow. And people are like, oh man, you'll figure it out. You're great. You're super sharp. I don't want that. I want them to say, oh, well, you know what your problem is? You're not doing this, or you keep overlooking that, or you're too focused over here. But I as much as I kind of don't like to be criticized, I do want that credit. I want to know where I can grow. I want to know where my weaknesses are so that I can improve, or I can find somebody who's got a strength in that area. So I think we've got 8 or 9 minutes left here. I've got some questions that I can cover, but first, Kenny, do you have any other thoughts or things that you think we ought to clarify, or that have been impactful on our team that you've seen, or thing you want to double down on?
No, not really. I mean, I think you covered it, and then kind of just me reiterating taking the time to do your planning and your goal setting and tracking all that stuff out from annual to down to a daily is important. It's not something that's probably a new idea to people, but it's an idea that needs to be repeated over and over to people, that it works and that they shouldn't try to outsmart it.
Yeah, a couple of thoughts on that is I don't think having a plan is unique at all, but I think this structure is fairly unique. And I think a lot of people make their annual plan on December 30th or December 31st or January 1st. It comes in the form of resolutions or goals without any sort of actual plan to achieve those goals. I think a lot of annual planning is really more so goal setting. There's less evaluation and analysis. There's less chunking on the process. It doesn't always get kind of organized into action steps. It maintains kind of a big rah-rah word on the wall that's hard to quantify. And this process that's when I began to grow, when I began to break it into the steps. The other thing is when I began to do it earlier in the year, a month or two out before the next year. Ideally this happens in October or November so that you've got some time to let it sift in, get the ball rolling, because as everyone knows, certainly production-wise, what's happening in late October and early November is likely to roll into December and January. So what's happening now is already affecting production for 2016. What's happening late in the year is going to affect the beginning of the year. If you need to do some hiring or some firing or some training or some systems implementation, and you would like to have a full calendar year of use on that, then those things need to happen earlier on. The other thing I really want to emphasize is you do need to take 2 full nights and 1 full day at least to do this. My recommendation for the full day is to get out of your office. If you work from home, definitely get out of there. If you work off-site in an office, get out of there. If you have leadership in your company, bring them with you. Kenny's with me, and then our director of operations for the team came with us as well. We went off-site just in the last couple of weeks. And honestly, some of that time is not really fun. You want to certainly recognize, and this is the point I want to make too, is during this process, you want to recognize the successes and the things you did well the previous year that you can grow on and increase and improve on in the next year. You want to celebrate those things. But the reality is this process of kind of introspection and self-analysis and looking at what you can do better the next year and what you can improve on, you're probably going to spend a little bit more time on need to fix, things that you haven't done yet, things that you haven't been able to figure out, or you haven't been able to get to, or you couldn't afford, or whatever. And so it's okay to kind of manage the emotion and that process and say, look, get off site, do this someplace out of your normal work environment, spend an entire day so that you can take an extra hour to really think through something. You can take an extra hour to make sure that you don't make a snap judgment and then move on too quickly. And then you can let that stretch into the night. So it's a full day. It could be, no less than 6 or 8 hours, and it could be 8 or 10 or 12. And you could take a long weekend and go do a full annual planning retreat. I think that's a great idea. But this is something that really ought to be focused. It ought to be uninterrupted. And I believe a really great process is to take an evening or a half day about a week before you take a full day off site, and then let that simmer in over that second evening, and then come back. And hopefully this is done October, November, worst case early December, so that if 3 or 4 weeks into it, you just go, that's something about that doesn't feel right. You've got time to course correct. And then you have time, hopefully, again, late November, early December, to present to your team, your spouse, your partner, whoever may be involved in this process, your vendor partners and things like that, this is what we're going to do next year. Not this is what we're going to try to do, but this is what we are going to do next year. This is the vision. Remember, I started with vision leaks. I'm going to communicate the vision to myself and to my team. Let's get this on the wall. Let's get this in writing. Let's get this in audio. Let's get this in video. Let's remind ourselves of this daily. And so there's several other things you can do with the documents and the structure of this process. You want to encourage your team members, and you want to do this yourself. You want to review that monthly goal every single day. You want to review that quarterly goal every day or every week. You want to review your annual plan at least every quarter. And so you're going back to that master to-do list. You're adding more things. You're narrowing down again. You're moving that over to your quarterly plan. And then your quarterly plan is getting chunked down into a monthly plan. And then every single morning you're filling out your daily to-do list based on that quarterly plan and your monthly plan and your goals, so that I'm doing today what needs to be done to get me to my quarterly plan, my annual plan, my 3 to 5 year, and that huge, amazing, invigorating, exciting, rejuvenating 10+ year goal. I'm doing today what needs to be done so that, I can live in Italy, or I can take 3 months off a year, or I can buy a lake house, or whatever the thing that gets you super, super passionate is. So hopefully this was helpful. We've got a minute or two if there's another question. I think I've answered everything that came through. There's questions always about what does that day look like? Do I need to go off site? What if I'm the only person? Hopefully I've answered all those. If you've got any other questions, email Kenny@toddtramonte.com or Todd@toddtramonte.com. The other thing I want to say is, if you're interested in the structure of this, we're offering a free trial in our members only group. You can actually try the group out for 60 days. And what we'll do is we'll send you a startup kit. We call it the Free Real Estate Toolkit. Kenny, it's freerealestatetoolkit.com, correct?
Right.
Yeah, so freerealestatetoolkit.com, and you'll get hard copies of everything you saw here and a ton more. You'll get training CDs for role play sessions, for buyer conversion call role play, seller conversion call role play, expireds, for sale by owners, internet leads, referrals, open house, all that kind of stuff. You will get access to our private Facebook group for our members only, where we're asking questions and answering questions all day, every day. Usually within a couple of hours, we're sharing videos and documents, and people are talking about what they're struggling with, and other people are sharing how they would do that. I'm answering questions. We're offering a free strategy call if folks join the free trial deal. I'd be happy to jump on the phone with you for 15 or 20 minutes and talk specifically about your business. If you want more private training or consulting than that, we offer some other things that we can let you know about. Go over to freerealestatetoolkit.com, fill that out. All you pay is shipping, so I think you pay less than $20, and then we'll ship you out a box full of all these documents and some really cool stuff, and CDs, and access to all kinds of really cool stuff. And you can try it out, and we'll see if this kind of thing's helpful for you. We're talking through planning and strategy and recruiting and conversion and appointments and negotiation, all kinds of really cool stuff in the group, and you can be a part of that. So hopefully that's helpful. If you have questions outside that, just email Kenny, Kenny, at toddtramonte.com, and he can usually get you an answer quicker than me. And we'll be happy to connect with you, set up a free strategy call if you have questions about any of this. Would love to learn a little bit more about you and your business. But freerealestatetoolkit.com will give you a shot at a 60-day trial and a box full of really, really valuable stuff for less than $20. And an email to Kenny will get you pointed towards some questions or setting up a free strategy call. And I hope this was helpful. It was just jam-packed with information and content, and I literally showed you the exact documents that we use. And I'd love to work with you in the future, but hopefully this is helpful for you. Feel free to share this with anybody. Post it to Facebook or Twitter or whatever you want. Share it with your team. Share it with your brokerage office or your broker, your friends all over the country. We hope it helps you because it had tremendous impact on my business, and we've pieced this together from books and people and life lessons and screwing it up on our own. So go check out freerealestatetoolkit.com. Send us an email, kenny@toddtramonte.com. Thanks for spending some time with us. Hope it was helpful, and we will see you next month on the 4th Wednesday at 12:30 Central. Have a good one. Take care, guys.